I want to tell you a fairy tale. Now, this is just complete fairy tale and has no relevance to anything at all that might be happening today. I don't want you to think that this has any bearing on things happening today. It's complete, utter fairy tale. And if there is any bearings on things that are happening today, it's purely by coincidence. Assuming you believe in coincidences. So there's this place, let's call it an island, the country that is. It's the country that is, and it's a lovely country that is, and people go about their business doing all sorts of stuff. They're buying things and selling things, and they're using gold and silver to buy things and set up their houses and you know, have nice little televisions and sit on a sofa and all those sort of things, and it's all very nice and easy. But actually becoming a bit tricky buying things with silver and gold as they did. And somebody came up with this concept. He said, I'll tell you what, instead of buying things with silver and gold, why don't we use bits of paper? And it says on the bit of paper, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of on demand, however much it is, let's say £5 of sterling silver, for example. And the people in this say, yeah, that's a good idea because it saves me actually having to carry all that silver. And so then you would go into a shop and you would buy something, and the shopkeeper would look at it and go, well, what's this? This is a bit of paper. He said, well, I normally have silver. Yes, but this is a bit of paper that says, I promise to pay the bearer on the demand the silver. You can take that into the bank and they will give you the silver. Oh, says the shopkeeper, that's a novel thing. And he may then test that idea and he says, all right, then I'll give you £5 of potatoes. And he goes into the bank. And he says, is it true that I can swap this? And the bank manager says, yeah, no problem at all. Here we go. There's your silver. Oh, that's convenient. And so this idea catches on and everybody's using these notes, and they know that these notes, these promises to pay, if you went to the bank, you could get the silver or the gold, depending on the denomination of the notes. And it all seemed very simple. Now, that's going on. Meanwhile, in this world, there are these people, let's call them narcissistic bastards, because that's what they are. They were quite mean people and didn't really care about anybody else other than themselves. And they said to themselves, here, we could get stinking rich, you know. I said, really? How can we get stinking rich? I mean, we're all quite rich because we're all, you know, we've been very focused and we've blagged our way and run scams and all sorts of things. No. We can get really rich because I've got this idea. So they all huddled together. And this idea started to come to fruition. So the idea was quite simple. They said, look, why don't we make sure that everybody who gets born has a birth certificate? They said, oh yeah, that's all right. So they get a birth certificate. So what? He says, no. We give them a birth certificate, right? And we take their first name and we take their surname and we join them together and we'll put them in capitalization because people don't do that. So that's how we know that anything that's in capitalization, that name refers back to the birth certificate. Right, okay, how does that help us? Well, what we're going to do then is we're going to invest some money in this birth certificate, some gold and silver, whatever, and we're going to put it onto the stock exchange. Right. And then one of them said, hang on a minute, you're putting it onto the stock exchange, it's just a bit of paper. He said, no. The bit of paper represents the individual who was born. That person is going to grow up and all through their life, they're going to work and they're going to buy things, they're going to invent things, they're going to do things, they're going to pay their taxes. They are the stock. Oh, so we're investing in that stock. And every time they pay their taxes and their bills and what have you, the money is going to increase. They're going to be worth something. So we'll put that on the stock exchange and we will make some money because we're the ones investing in it. And they said, oh, I see. But because we're investing in it, it means there's a trust fund, you see. So let's say, for example, we were to, I don't know, how would we know how much that person's going to be worth? We'll weigh, not the baby itself, because they might guess that, we'll weigh the placenta. And let's say the placenta is, for the sake of argument, £6 in weight. Might not be, but I don't know. So instead of £6, we'll invest, say, £600,000. And we'll put it in gold and we'll invest it and float it on the stock market. Yeah, okay. Then they go about their business. We've got £600,000 investment in them. They don't know. And there's this slush fund called a trust fund, which, of course, they would be the beneficiary of that trust fund. They could spend that fund because we would be the trustees who manage it, but they could spend it, but we won't tell them. Oh, that's a brilliant idea. So we'll keep them in ignorance. So they've got this money, it's called their trust fund, and we can, you know, we'll have the same thing. We'll have a birth certificate and we'll have a trust fund, but we can spend ours and make a lot of money. Plus the fact when they snuff it, when they die, they don't know they've had this trust fund. Then we get our hands on their money. And all these narcissistic bastards were going, oh, this is brilliant. We can be stinking rich. We can now buy some very expensive yachts. We can have aeroplanes and helicopters. We could even have an island, and we can pay for people to come and wipe our bums and cook us lovely meals. I said, yeah, we could. And somebody said, well, what about them? Well, couldn't they do that? And they said, well, they could. Of course they could. But we don't tell them. Ah, brilliant. He said, but wait a minute. It gets better. Oh, how can it possibly get better than that? He said, well, what we're going to do is the gold that backs these notes and the silver, we're going to remove that. So those people will go about their business. They've got so used to using these notes now, they've forgotten that they can go into the bank and ask for the same equivalent in silver. They don't do it. They don't need to do it because what's the point? They can just keep buying stuff with these bits of paper. Well, we're going to remove the gold standard now, take the gold standard off, and they've just got bits of paper. And one of the narcissistic bastards says, yeah, that's a very clever idea, but what are the bits of paper worth then? Oh, they're not worth anything. They're not worth the paper they're even printed on. I said, wow. And yet those people who are still going about their business, you know, they're all like laudable people, honourable people, they help each other and all that sort of nonsense. They're using those notes in good faith that they actually mean something. But of course, they mean nothing. They're just blind faith. Wow, that's really good. So what we need to do is it's the Bank of our country has issued those notes, and the Bank of our country will turn it into a corporation still linked to the government, right? So what the thing is all these bits of papers are promises to pay. They're basically IOUs, and these people are still buying things with an IOU, which means all the time they're just buying debt because it's an I owe you this money, and now you owe me, and 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 all this debt is going back to the bank who issued the notes that says their name, the Bank of this country here, and it's linked to the government. So the government are going, oh, it all comes back to us, doesn't it? Because they keep spending these notes which are valueless, but the debt keeps increasing. So you could say that the government look at this debt and think, well, this is kind of the debt of the nation, isn't it? Like a national debt. And the national debt keeps going up and up and up and up, and it never gets paid. But some of the people might get a bit wise and go, hang on a minute, we've got this national debt. Where did that come from? Not knowing it's actually them spending these bits of paper that mean nothing. So the government turns around and says, oh, well, you know, we have to fund this war and we've got to put infrastructure in and build bridges and railways and underground sewers and all of that. And we need to borrow money. And so we're borrowing money to do all of this. Of course, the money really that they're borrowing is they're just adding to the national debt. The national debt is going up. People are spending these promissory notes, increasing debt because they're just a debt-based currency. And so they keep spending this, and this national debt keeps going up. And so one of the narcissistic bastards says, but what would happen? What would happen, though, if those people discovered they had a line of credit like we do and they just used the trust? And they said, they can't do that. That's why we don't tell them. He said, oh, what do you mean? Well, if they all knew that instead of using bits of paper which were increasing the national debt, that actually they had this line of credit, that they could go into a showroom and say, there's a nice car. Oh, I'd like that, please. And that the chap selling the car says, yeah, no problem, that's 100,000. And they say, yeah, no problem, I'll just write my signature to approve it and put it on my tab i.e. the trust, if they knew that they could do that and they knew that they were multimillionaires because they have this trust fund, then who's going to go to work? Who's going to go and do all the jobs that we want them to do? If they think that they and know that they are stinking rich and can have their own yachts and islands and airplanes and helicopters and have people rubbing their bum, well, who's going to do the rubbing the bum and the growing of the food and the making things and making our yachts and our airplanes and flying this and chauffeuring them and cooking our food? If they're all multimillionaires, no one's going to do anything and the system will collapse. Oh, said the narcissistic bastards as they all were nodding in agreement, smoking their big Cuban cigars. Clearly we mustn't tell them, and we must push back should they ever find out that they actually have a line of credit. Yes, but it comes to a point, said one of the narcissistic bastards, at some point the system is likely to crash because people will lose faith in the debt-based currency and they'll see the national debt going so high they won't know what to do. And the other narcissistic bastard there who came up with the original idea said, I've already thought of that. You see, what we do then is we zero the national debt. We just zero it. We say it no longer exists. And they said, oh, how do we do that? He says, well, it's very simple. All we've got to do is liquidize the stock. We just get shot of that and we start again. Ah, yes, of course, they all said, rubbing their hands in glee, remembering exactly who was the stock and how they were going to liquidize them. As I say, this is just a fairy story, couldn't possibly be true, but every now and again I do wonder if plans are not afoot to liquidize that stock.